Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick with the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my tight end start or sit decisions for week number 2. Inside today's video, I'll be going in depth into every single matchup, beginning with Thursday Night Football and closing out with the doubleheader on Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the tight ends in all of those games. But before we could get on into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at Notorious FNTSY. I would also like to ask that if you guys have any questions about fantasy football this week, it doesn't even have to be tight end related, please make sure you leave it down below in the comment section. I love talking to you guys down there. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 2 tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. In this matchup, you're obviously going to be playing Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is a must-start tight end every single week. He ended up going off up against the Arizona Cardinals last week and having a huge game. It is definitely possible that he has as big of a game, if not even a better game this week in what should be a high-scoring matchup up against the Chargers. Chargers tight end Gerald Everett had a fine evening up against the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think he could definitely do even better this week with an increased target share, because I think it's definitely possible that he sees more targets this week because Keenan Allen is going to be out the entire game. Keenan Allen did get hurt definitely pretty early into last week, but I think just a full game of him missing, we might see Gerald Everett a little bit more involved in the game plan. He did score last week. He had a good game, but I think maybe he could have an even bigger game this week up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now we move to the beginning of the Sunday slate with the Miami Dolphins going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. Mike Gesicki was a guy that I was steering clear away from all offseason long. There was a lot of talks about Mike Gesicki struggling in blocking, and Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he wants this team to be able to run the ball, and he wants a tight end that is going to be able to block. And that is why we barely saw any of Mike Gesicki on Sunday up against the Patriots. Now, is it entirely possible that Gesicki could get better at blocking and Gesicki could be a main piece in this Dolphins offense a couple of weeks from now? Definitely. Learning how to block is going to take time for Gesicki. But right now, in week number 2, based upon what I saw in week number 1, there is virtually zero fucking reason to start Mike Gesicki. And if I'm being honest with you, I don't even think this is an overreaction to week number 1. I don't even think Mike Gesicki should be on your team if you have him. Because even with these blocking issues, they just have so many players that the Dolphins want to utilize that it seems like, at least right now, that you don't want anything to do with Mike Gesicki. For the Baltimore Ravens, Mark Andrews definitely struggled last week up against the Jets, and it wasn't that he couldn't get open or anything, it's just that Lamar wasn't really throwing him the ball, and he had a bad game compared to what you are used to for Mark Andrews. Now, the Dolphins defense looked good up against Hunter Henry last week and that whole Patriots offense, but there's a big difference between the Patriots offense and the Baltimore Ravens offense. The Ravens offense is like 1,000 fucking times better, so I think Mark Andrews should have a better game this week and could easily be the number 1 tight end at the end of the week. He is just that fucking good. Next up, we move to the Jumbo Jets at the Cleveland Browns. Here, we're going to start David Njoku, but David Njoku is basically the last one into being a start. If I had to rank all of these guys that I'm going to talk about and have already talked about as starts, David Njoku would be DFL, dead fucking last in those rankings. And to be honest with you, it really has nothing to do with the skill of David Njoku, because I believe David Njoku is an immensely talented tight end. It just has to do with the fact that Jacoby Brissett was not looking his way at all last week, and David Njoku did not appear to be a big part of this game plan for the Cleveland Browns. Brissett heavily peppered Donovan Peoples-Jones. Amari Cooper was doing his best John Cena impression because he was kind of invisible in that game. And it seems like the Browns just want to either hand the ball to 9-inch Nicholas Chubb or dump the ball off to Kareem Hunt. And that will work very effectively up against the Jets, because just giving the ball to Chubb and Hunt could be destructive to the Jets defense. So again, you can start Njoku because I think he's a talented player, but if he shits the bed again here this week, then I think I kind of just got to be out on David Njoku until Deshaun Watson returns. For the Jets, their biggest issue is the fact that Zach Wilson is hurt. I don't think Zach Wilson is the best quarterback ever, but if they had Zach Wilson, then at least you wouldn't have to watch the fucking Joe Flacco experience. That guy is as stiff as a goddamn board in the pocket. The guy is atrocious, and it makes virtually zero sense that he is the starting quarterback on the team. Again, sure, it's the safe play, right? It's like wrapping 50 fucking condoms around your team, right? Joe Flacco isn't very good, but he's also not going to throw 10 picks in a game. Mike White might lead the Jets to a win, or Mike White might bend the team over and throw 7 interceptions. But guess what? If you're the Jets, you're playing to win. You're not playing to lose by just 7 in the game. So play fucking Mike White. They're not going to. Tyler Conklin's pretty talented, as is CJ Uzomah. But with Flacco out there and the fact that they're both getting some usage, I think they're both best left on the waiver wire. Next up, we move to the Washington Commanders at the Detroit Lions. TJ Hawkinson is going to be a start for me in this game. This game has one of the highest projected point totals via Vegas. I believe right now they are the second highest projected scoring game in the NFL for week number 2. Hawkinson is always a guy that you want to be starting because of the upside that he possesses and the fact that he's a decent red zone threat for the team. Up against the Commanders, again, this looks like a high-scoring matchup on paper, a tit-for-tat game with the Washington Commanders, so I definitely like Hawkinson. Logan Thomas was looking pretty good last week, so I think maybe starting next week, if he puts up another solid performance, you can play Logan Thomas. Now, if you said, Nick, I want to play Logan Thomas over David Njoku, I wouldn't hate you for that. I would not hate you for that at all, because I think Logan Thomas is on the very fringe. He is very close to peeking his head over like that one dude in, what's that show? The Tim Allen Show? I don't remember what that show is called. But the guy who played Santa Claus, that show where there was a guy that was behind a fence and he peeked his head out, kind of like that. Logan Thomas is peeking his head out just like that to potentially being a start-worthy tight end every single week. Next up, we move to the Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I will keep this one short like Kyler Murray. Mo Alley Cox is a relatively solid tight end. Like, I don't think he's a bad player, but it doesn't seem like he's very involved in the game plan for the Colts. I don't think he's a big piece of this team. I think they want to get Alec Pierce involved. They want to obviously run with Jonathan Taylor and throw the ball to Michael Pittman. So, Mo Cox is kind of the odd man out. I do love his nickname that I gave him, Mo Money, Mo Cox. But besides the cool nickname, definitely not a start-worthy player. Evan Ingram went 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's last week. He didn't drop the ball. Huge round of applause for Evan Ingram for not dropping the fucking ball, because this guy has the worst case maybe ever of Butterfingers. But even with that said, Evan Ingram doesn't seem like he's going to be seeing like 8 potential targets a game, even 6 or 7 a game. And unless a guy I can reasonably see getting those amount of targets, they just don't really seem start-worthy to me. Next up, we move to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints. Taysom Hill last week was just amazing. Taysom Hill gets in the game, runs the ball for a zillion yards, and looks great because he was playing the quarterback in that scenario. There are probably going to be plays every single week where Taysom Hill is given the opportunity to either throw the ball or run the ball as the quarterback. I don't think, though, that every week will go as swimmingly as last week up against the inept Atlanta Falcons defense. So Taysom Hill might be a hot waiver wire pickup. People might pick him up. But at the end of the day, would it surprise you this week if Taysom Hill put up 0 points? It shouldn't. Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that when Taysom Hill's in the game, he's probably not going to throw it, and he's going to look to run it. Pretty simple. So I think the Bucs are smart enough to stop Taysom Hill, Cameron Brate, Kyle Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, Cade Otton. They have a bunch of tight ends, none of them named Gronk. Tom Brady looked all right against the Cowboys. Just seems like the tight end is not a big contributor on this team, regardless of who it is. So Cam Brate, all those guys can sit on the bench. Next up, we move to the Carolina Panthers at the New York Football Giants. Tommy, make that ass tremble for the Carolina Panthers will be a sit for me. It just does not seem like Baker Mayfield is a big tight end guy. It doesn't seem like Baker Mayfield locks into the tight end, so we're going to sit Tremble. Daniel Bellinger is an interesting prospect for the Giants, and maybe a couple years from now, Daniel Bellinger is a weekly start. But right now, based upon how Daniel Jones looked in week number 1 and how this passing attack looked in week number 1, things seem no bueno for Mr. Bellinger. Next up, we got the New England Deflatriots at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here, I'm giving Hunter Henry one last chance. Hunter Henry was incredibly good last year because he was scoring touchdowns. He wasn't a guy that was getting a high amount of targets, but he was scoring touchdowns. Last week, the Patriots, if it wasn't for a blown, he was either holding or pass interference call on the Dolphins, they probably wouldn't have even fucking scored. So, the Patriots offense looks bad. Matt Patricia should take that pencil out of his ear and shove it directly up his ass because that guy is atrocious at calling plays. The Patriots offense was awful. It was honestly hilarious to see what the Patriots used to be compared to what they are right now. Now, Nick, it was just week 1. Don't overreact. I'm not going ahead and saying, oh, you got to sit all these Patriots players, but this is kind of the last ride for me with Hunter Henry because I was someone who was very big into Hunter Henry because I thought this offense would just figure it out, right? It's the Patriots. They'll figure it out. Hunter Henry will be fine because the Patriots offense will be able to march up and down the field. Up against the Steelers defense definitely a lot worse without TJ Watt, but they're still pretty decent. I think Hunter Henry could score in this game, so I'm going to play him. But if he doesn't look very good this week, then Hunter Henry will be riding the pine until further notice. When it comes to Pat Freiermuth, he was definitely heavily involved last week up against the Bengals. The worry with Freiermuth is that the Steelers' offense looked bad. Like, the Bengals turned the ball over so much, and the Steelers barely fucking did anything with that. Could Trubisky get better? I actually think Trubisky is better than most people give him the credit for, but that week 1 game, pretty fucking bad. Freiermuth, though, does seem to be a clear target of a clear focal point of this offense in terms of the guy that Mr. Trubisky, Mr. Kiss and Titties Trubisky wants to throw the ball to, so I'm fine with Freiermuth. Let's just hope that Mr. Trubisky looks a little bit better. Next up, we move to the Atlanta Falcons at the LA Rams. Last week, Kyle Pitts was a guy that you started, that everyone would have told you to start, and instead of starting, he basically sharted directly on your face because Kyle Pitts, that was an awful joke. I hate the word sharted, but I thought it was funny in the moment. Don't think it was, but Kyle Pitts did not look good last week. Do I think that Kyle Pitts is washed up or something? No. But now I'm starting to worry slightly about how much Mariota is going to look to target him. But those worries are kind of negated by the lack thereof weapons for Mariota to throw the ball to, as well as the fact that Mariota force-fed Delaney Walker a couple of years ago into being an extremely fantasy-relevant tight end. So I think Pitts will be just fine. Don't overreact. Don't bench Pitts. Fire him up against the Rams defense. Tyler Higbee got so many opportunities last week, and for what he got, for how many targets he got, the guy basically sucked ass for what he was given. But the fact that Mr. Matthew Stafford loves throwing the ball to him, the fact that this team very likely will have a big bounce back in week number 2, I am very confident in Tyler Higbee, and if I'm being honest with you, would not be surprised if he was the number 1 tight end at the end of the week. Next up, we move to the Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers. Now, George Kittle did not practice again today on Wednesday. I know the game is on Sunday, but I am incredibly nervous, and I really think that George Kittle's going to miss yet again. George Kittle says today on Wednesday that, oh, I want to play. Sure, everyone wants to fucking play, but I don't think he's going to be able to play. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not a doctor, okay? Not a doctor. I give fantasy football advice out on the internet, but everything that I have seen seems very negative towards George Kittle. And even when he first, there was first reports of this injury last week, it seemed like a lot of these doctors are saying he might miss 3 or 4 games. So now we're in week number 2 and things aren't seeming great. I honestly doubt he plays this week. Tyler Kroft is the backup, the fucking Tomb Raider for the 49ers. He would be a sit if Kittle doesn't play. If Kittle plays, I guess you're going to have to roll him out there, but you can't expect much if he's banged up. Noah Fant of the Seattle Seahawks They also have Will Disley, who scored last week in that revenge game, or not a revenge game for him, but in that Seahawks technical revenge game against Russ. Let's be honest, Fant, very touchdown dependent. Geno had a good game, but I don't think Geno Smith is that guy that he was last week. I think he's much worse than that. Like, it seemed like after the plays, because, when they go into the game, they script a bunch of plays for the beginning, and then as you get deeper and deeper into the game, you're not able to script that shit, right? So the first quarter, for some teams, is just entirely scripted. So in those scripted plays, those sequences, the running in practice, everything is firing at all cylinders. Geno looks like fucking Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't actually, but he looks amazing. Then, once things get off the script, once the script is thrown out the fucking window, then Geno Smith looks like Stevie fucking Wonder in the pocket. So I don't really expect Geno Smith to look very good this week up against the 49ers. And anything you saw from the 49ers last week, you can also take that, light it on fire, and toss it out the window as well, because there was torrential downpour. I've said this so many times that I'm sure if you watch all these videos, you're tired of hearing it. But if this is the first time you've seen a video of mine from this week, just don't take anything from that game. I don't think you should reasonably believe anything from that game because the weather was just so bad. You wouldn't have taken anything from that game, the Buffalo Bills versus the Patriots last year, where the wind was like 9,000 miles an hour. You just wouldn't do that. Next up, we got the Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. But before we do a nice breakdown of these two teams that going into the season, this probably would have been a premier matchup. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Diggs, versus the Bengals, Joe Shiesty, not CeeDee Lamb, he's on the Cowboys, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst. Ooh, what a matchup, Joe Mixon. Now we've got those guys versus Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys. How exciting. But before we get on into that, is what I meant to say, is I've got a quick word from our friends, our sponsor, over at Underdog Fantasy. I pointed the wrong way. They've been on your screen this entire video. I'm pointing at it right now. Underdog Fantasy is best known for their best ball contests. However, they have other offerings, and now they also have in-season best ball for the season. Week 6 through 17 contests called Best Ball Resurrection. If some of your players are injured, your best ball teams aren't looking too hot, or maybe your redraft team is already down fucking astronomical, you feel like everything's going wrong, then hop on over to Underdog and join the Best Ball Resurrection, which goes from week 6 of the NFL season to week number 17. You have up until week 6 kicks off on Thursday Night Football to get your entries in. $10 to enter, $100,000 to first place. And the best part about Best Ball on Underdog is the fact that you don't have to edit your lineup, because the whole purpose of Best Ball is that they automatically put the best players in for you at the end of the week. You also don't have to worry about the waiver wire, sitting there up late on Tuesday night, scrolling through a million leagues, doing the waivers. Don't have to worry about trades, calling up your friend, he can't answer, he's too busy watching the kids. Don't have to worry about that either. So check out Underdog Fantasy, promo code Stokastic, for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. So you deposit $100, they will give you an additional $100, which is 10 free additional entries into the Best Ball Resurrection tournament. Please make sure you guys do go ahead and check that out. It's very fun. Bengals at the Cowboys. I'm going to be starting both Hurst and Dalton Schultz. Hurst was popping last week. He looked incredible last week for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Mr. Titty Boy T. Higgins is going to be back for this game, so maybe that knocks Hurst down a peg. It seems like, at least, Higgins is going to play. Yesterday in the receiver video, I talked about how I didn't think Higgins was going to play, but now, a day later, it seems like he's going to play. Again, I make the videos off the information I have at that moment. Things can obviously change. So, Hayden Hurst going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys defense, kind of overrated, IMO in my opinion. So, think Hayden Hurst will be just fine. Again, he's not like a top 10 start, but if you're crawling through the waiver wire, you need a tight end, or maybe you're in a deeper league, Hayden Hurst is just fine. Dalton Schultz without Dak Prescott, plug your nose, start him. We'll see what happens with Cooper Rush. I don't think things could be as bad as last week, though, if I'm being honest with you, because things were looking really bad for these playmakers for the Dallas Cowboys. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos were using every tight end the team had, and I'm sure Nathaniel Hackett just looked at a fan, put him in a fucking uniform, and threw the ball to him and said he was a tight end, because the tight ends were getting peppered Salt Bay style by Mr. Russell Wilson. Albert Aquabonum, Albert O, didn't have the craziest game, but it seems like the team wants to push the tight end forward. They want to use the tight end. So I'm not clamoring for you to must start Albert O, but I do think if you have him on your roster and you don't have that many other options, you can definitely play him up against the Houston Texans. The Broncos drastically fucked up that game up against the Seattle Seahawks on Monday night, so I think they're about to lay a grade A ass whooping on the Texans. I think Albert O could be a part of that. Brevin Jordan, looking like John Cena, you couldn't see him, man, was invisible. Didn't do anything. You got to get one of those milk cartons where it's like missing, you know what I'm talking about? Missing Brevin Jordan. Where the hell was that guy? OJ Howard scores not one, but 2 tugs. OJ Howard was murdering the defense like another OJ I know murdered someone else. So OJ Howard, is he going to play great against the Broncos? Probably not. He's fool's gold. Unless he scores again this week, and then I'm going to just have to eat my fucking words and tell you to pick up O.J. Howard. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the Turn Your Volume Down. You should be used to this now if you've been watching these videos for a while. The Las Vegas Raiders. Zach Ertz and Darren Waller are guys I'm going to play every week. Zach Ertz wasn't super involved last week, but he was coming off of an injury. It seemed kind of up in the air if he was going to play, and if I'm being honest with you, I don't think he would have played if Rondale Moore was healthy. Like, I think if Rondale Moore was in for the Cardinals, then I'm like 99% sure they would have just sat Ertz. Ertz played decent last week. He scored a touchdown, so that's good. But I think he gets more than 2 targets once he's more healthy. So again, he might not be fully healthy, but this should be a high-scoring game environment. So I think Ertz could go ahead and score a touchdown here. So I'm definitely going to want to start him. Darren Waller, you drafted him early. He's an auto start. Derek Carr, if you're watching on podcast, I just made a face that I can't even describe. Bad looking face there. Derek Carr didn't look great. I think he could bounce back though this week. I'm not saying that Derek Carr sucks ass and you shouldn't start him, but not the best performance for week number 1, but Waller is an auto start every week. Now we pivot into the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. I wish I could say Chicago, like how they say it in Chicago. No, that was an awful Chicago accent. A lot of people I work with at Stokastic, they're great at saying Chicago. It sounds so much better than how I say it, but Chicago, again, I fucked it up. Chicago at the Cheeseheads, the Packers. Now, Cole Kmet last week put on a snoozer of a game. He put up, as they call it, a goose egg, 0. Zilch, didn't do anything. But again, don't fucking panic. Don't be like, oh, Cole Kmet had a shitty game week 1. It was a torrential downpour. It was awful. The weather was terrible. I saw a video of a guy at the game eating popcorn, and all you see out of nowhere is from above, like, it looked like goddamn Niagara Falls went into his popcorn because of how much it was raining and coming off the thing. It looked disgusting to be at that game. I don't even know why people show up. I guess people are stronger than me because I wouldn't have wanted to sit in that wet-ass weather like that. But Cole Kmet didn't do anything. But it's okay because, again, the weather was awful. I'm not taking anything from that game. I'm not overreacting. There's no need to overreact. Kmet is probably the clear number 2 target on this team. Kmet is going to be fed the ball when, Justin Fields can actually throw the ball correctly and it's not slipping out of his hand. Go with Cole Kmet this week. Up against the Packers, Robert Tonyan, not a huge showing, not a gigantic performance from him last week, but I will continue to reiterate this. Aaron Rodgers loves guys that he has chemistry with. He loves throwing the ball to the players that he trusts. For instance, he trusts Robert Tonyan. Christian Watson dropped a wide open touchdown. He doesn't trust Christian Watson. He trusts Robert Tonyan. So I think as Robert Tonyan gets more and more healthy as the season progresses, we could see a vintage Robert Tonyan performance now. Vintage, as if that's like 20 years ago. 2 years ago, we saw a great Robert Tonyan season. Maybe we see that again with a high touchdown total for the Cheesehead. Next up, we move to the doubleheader of Monday Night Football. First game here, I believe 6:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff, I think. And then the next game starts at 8:15. The Les Titans at the Buffalo Bills. Here, we're starting Dawson Knox one time if you are with me. Now, Dawson Knox, where was he last week? He's on the field all the time, doesn't see very many targets. When they got in the red zone, it's like, here's the time for Dawson Knox. And then the time never happened, right? But he was in the game. They were using him a lot. They gave him a fat contract prior to Thursday Night Football last week. They paid the man the money. They got rid of O.J. Howard so that O.J. Howard could have that big game with the Houston Texans. So you better believe that Dawson Knox isn't just this one-hit wonder. He's not. I understand he scored a lot of touchdowns last year. I get it. But it's not like he can't score a lot of touchdowns again. The Buffalo Bills is one of the best, if not the single best offenses in the NFL. They score a lot of points. In the red zone, they're going to look for Dawson Knox. I understand it didn't happen in week 1, but it's not like all of the players that we projected to be incredible in week 1 performed, so it's okay. It's okay to have a bad game. So Knox is just fine. Don't overreact. Austin Hooper could be good. I think he could be good, but right now, probably would want to sit him against the Bills. I just don't think that the situation is there yet for him. But I think towards the end of the year, there could be points in the season where Hooper really does have a great game. But again, right now, I definitely stay away from him. And then the final game here to close off the doubleheader on Monday Night Football, the Minnesota Vikings at the Philadelphia Eagles. Irv Smith, another one of those players. Could have put the missing poster out for him. Where is Irv Smith? Guy put up a fucking goose egg. Sad, because I think Irv Smith's a good player. But basically, everyone on the Minnesota Vikings, besides Justin as well as Mr. Kirk Cousins, put up basically a goose egg, right? They didn't do good. They didn't get above 10 points. So, this week and going forward, I think Irv Smith could be good. But let's teach him a lesson by putting him on the bench. And then next week, if he has a good game this weekend up against the Eagles or on Monday against the Eagles, then next week you can fire him up. But for right now, I'd keep it cautious and sit him down because this is a new system in Minnesota, and maybe, just maybe, the tight end won't be viable. Dallas Goedert is an obvious start every single week. Him and Jalen Hurts have this connection. Jalen Hurts loves throwing the ball to Dallas Goedert, so you gotta love starting him. So with that all said, thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that if you are new to the channel to hit that subscribe button down below. And whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you hit a like on today's video and leave down below in the comment section any questions you have. They don't have to be about tight ends necessarily. It could be quarterback, running back, wide receiver, trade questions, anything. Let me know down below in the comment section. I love talking to you guys down there. I hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. Promo code Stokastic. Have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.